Today we have quite a bit of a special video here, since I'm showing my first experience with Australian knife maker Matt Sue of Sue Bladeworx. So I've known about, well, not Matt specifically, but I've known about Sue Bladeworx for a couple of years. I've seen some of their knife designs, and they are usually a bit, well, how should I put it, a bit different, kind of wild of sorts. And sometimes they are made in steels that are perhaps not my preferred steels, if I put it like that. But you know, I've been, you know, thinking every now and then to pick up a knife, and I've seen designs that are, they may be a bit wild, a bit, you know, special, but they've still spoken to me. But I've had yet to pull the trigger until I saw this blade, the Warmonger. And this was a design that, you know, really spoke to me, which is why there are two Warmongers here on my table. So this is obviously quite a large knife, meant to be a chopper, of course. And well, people that know me know that I have quite a few of large knives in my collection. Then again, I also have quite a few small knives, medium-sized knives. Well, I do have knives in all sizes, and quite a lot of them. But like I said, this was, you know, the first time I felt like I really had to pull the trigger. And you know, availability has been an issue as well, because most of, you know, the knives from Sue Bladeworx, they tend to sell out rather fast. And this model is, you know, generally speaking, sold out, I believe. However, Lamnia managed to secure a really good batch. So I mean, they have, I'm not quite sure, maybe they have like 20 in stock as I'm recording this video, and those 20 are in, you know, different, they can be like perhaps, well, less than 10 that has this antique satin finish, and then there are some different types of Cerakotes, like 2 black, 2 dark earth, 2 grey, etc. So there aren't a whole lot of them, but Lamnia seems to be the only place that actually has them in stock. From my understanding, since I joined the Sue Nation, I think it's called, Matt Sue's official group on Facebook, these are usually, you know, made in batches with, you know, pre-order system. So usually the knives are kind of sold out when they are released. Sold out through the pre-order system, so that is something to think about perhaps. But then again, there are dealers such as Lamnia, based in Finland, that is making, you know, maybe they are making some sort of pre-order to secure a certain number of knives from different batches. So that is how I finally managed to get my hands on these two Warmongers. So let's take a look here at what we have. There are a few aspects to go over before we well, put them to any actual use, so to say. Well, let's start by taking just a quick look at these two versions, and then we can focus on one of them to go over the actual specs. But what we have here is the antique, not perhaps a you know, pure satin finish version of the blade, but kind of close to it. This is a cheaper version than all the ones with Cerakote, but not a whole lot cheaper. Still quite an expensive blade. Let's put this aside here. Then I also went with one in black Cerakote. Not grey, not dark earth, but black. And these are black, well, I presume they are G10 handles or G10 scales with red liners on all of them. So black Cerakote. But I'm gonna go with the antique now for the specs, because it will be easier to see the details in contrast to the black background here. We can, however, talk a little bit about the sheath before we start discussing the full specs of the knife. So I would perhaps have preferred a Kydex sheath for this model, or a Kydex sheath with some leather wrapping on. That would have been really, really nice. But this is a semi-sturdy leather sheath with the So Bladeworx logo stamped or put here on it. Some rivets. No, I'm not sure what these are actually called in English. It's been too long since I made a more full detailed video of sorts. Some nice stitching, nothing super, nothing that really stands out like that, but it is a nice sheath. The leather has a good smell to it, which is perhaps it's always a nice thing, right? Looking at the back side here, we can see that there is no dangler, no belt loop or anything, so you will not be able to carry this sheath on your belt if that is what you were planning to do. And I think it's going to be semi-tricky to modify it with a dangler attachment or a belt loop of sorts. So that will mean having to look into maybe a custom sheath maker, which could be worth the upgrade, since the blade is quite nice and deserving of only the best. The snap here can be turned around, put aside here, so you don't accidentally cut it or anything like that. I guess that maybe you can change the position a bit here. One thing that I did notice here, and I think it's actually worth mentioning, is that when you place the knife here in the sheath, like this, and you snap it up, it is still possible for the knife to move quite a bit here. So this is something to have in mind a bit. I'm not saying it is a major concern, but I will say that I would perhaps have liked to see another design here for the actual snapping of the knife to better secure it than the way it was designed right now. But not it doesn't have to be a super concern, but I just want to point it out of sorts. Other than that, it is a nice sturdy leather sheath. So, and I'm not gonna belt carry it anyways. I'm probably gonna put it in my backpack in some way, or I'm gonna have a Kydex sheath made for it. So, enough about the sheath, and let's look into to the actual specs here. The steel, let's start with that. This is Sleipner steel. I have no previous experience with Sleipner. I've heard and read that it is supposedly a sort of a upgraded version of D2 steel with some better, edge retention and better corrosion resistance. It should be plenty tough enough. It is a chopper after all, and I have no doubt that the knife will hold up. The edge here is quite, actually quite thick, so I think that it shouldn't be no issues with you know, chipping or rolling or anything like that. And I still think it will be quite capable of doing some serious slicing. The grind is a full flat grind. We got this fuller going on here on both sides of the knife. We've got this little hole here in the top here. And we got a small, well, this is not really a finger choil. It is quite, you know, strange. I would have loved, you know, to be able to fit my finger in this, like, semi-finger choil, sharpening choil. But the way it is designed makes it a bit difficult. And, you know, now that I have mentioned the sheath and the choil here, those are actually my only two issues with the entire knife. So I guess we started out this video in perhaps not the most, you know, fun or exciting way, but now we have gotten those two aspects out of the way. Because I think that this knife would have, the design would have benefited from a fully functioning finger choil. It would have worked super well with the finger groove already here to be able to do like this for close-up work. But that is sadly not the case, but it's not a deal breaker for me personally. So the handle here should be G10. I'm fairly sure that it's just, you know, black G10 and with some red liners going on. There is also some, well, let's call it jimping, but the jimping is like a full jimping that goes all the way on top of the blade or the spine and all the way, not in the finger groove here, but all the way here as well, giving you a better, more secure grip. Putting it like this is also quite comfortable, and I mean, maybe they thought, like, you know, given the design with the finger groove, we don't really need a finger choil as well. I mean, you will be able to do detailed work like this, and that is perhaps true. Still, I would have liked a finger choil. Anyway, the handle is quite lengthy, as you can see here. I wear size 10 in gloves. You can actually put it in a two-hand grip. Now this is unusual, I'd say. So two-hand grip, if that is how you would like to use the knife for maybe a bit of extra force. But you can have like a grip down here, a middle grip, and using the choil. The choil or the groove, and the finger groove here is quite large, so I guess that some people might, you know, be able to get 1.5 or even 2 fingers. I get 1 finger like this, but I have some extra space. So, let's see, the hardness here of the Sleipner steel should be a Rockwell between 59 and 60. The total weight of the knife is 870 grams. So it does have a bit of weight to it. Now I'm putting my greasy fingers all over the blade. Well, doesn't really matter too much. So let's go into the full specs here now. We have a total length of 48.5 centimeters. This is a fairly large knife. We have a blade length of 30 centimeters, 300 millimeters. And we have a blade thickness. Let's see if we can get that in the camera. Not so easy. A blade thickness of 6.5 millimeters. That is quite a thick blade. And as I stated, the knife is made by Matsu over in Australia. We also have a back part here of the knife. See perhaps this not sharpened part, but you know, like a glass breaker or skull crusher, if that is what some people would want to use it for. And I guess that if you don't want it, you could easily just grind it off, but I'm keeping it since it's not in the way. Ergos are nice. So large, heavy blade made for heavy work. Looking at the handle, we have some screws on this side. You can't feel the screws, they are in the actual holes. But on the other side, and this is a bit different, the screws are actually, protruding. They are not, sunk into the handle scales. Some people might think that looks strange or uncomfortable. It feels absolutely comfortable. I have no issues whatsoever, but it might look, well, unusual to some people. But in fact, it feels great in hand. So that should cover most of the, specification aspects, the design choices, etc. And I feel like we have a good overview of the knife. So before we put it to any actual use, I think it could be nice to see how well it slices some different kinds of paper. Now, this is not a dedicated slicer, I know that, but testing the sharpness of a new knife is a given to me. And I want to do that with all of the knives that I buy. So that is what we are doing next, a sharpness test. For the sharpness test, we're going to go with the usual stuff. We're going to go with some regular printing paper. We're going to go with some magazine paper. And we're going to go with some newspaper paper. And all of these kinds of paper, they pose different challenges. So just because it slices one of these well doesn't mean it will slice all of them well. So that is why I want to go with as much of a variety as possible. And I always like to start with printing paper. So that is what we are going to start with today as well. Trying to use as much of the edge as possible to see, that the sharpness is evenly grounded. It's getting a bit tricky on this one. Yeah. Slicing ordinary printing paper was not, much of a challenge. So let's try some different type of paper now. I think we're gonna go with some magazine paper next. Let's take a page here. See what we can accomplish. I think this is perhaps one of those times where I would have, appreciated using the actual finger choil, slicing this paper. Not a deal breaker, just pointing it out a little. So I think it is fairly safe to say that it will slice magazine paper quite well too. Which leaves us with only the newspaper test left, which sometimes actually poses the biggest challenge from my experience. So let's try this now. Now that's a bit tricky. Let's go with another piece here. Yeah, I mean, it is probably the more difficult type of paper for the knife to cut or slice. Even so, it will slice it. Yeah, so I mean, it will cut the magazine paper pretty decently. We could perhaps go for a... Should we shave some leg hair? I haven't done that in a while. I should have some leg hair now. Yeah, we can actually try to shave some leg hair as well. But slicing the different kinds of paper, printing paper, absolutely no problem. Breeze. Magazine paper, no problem at all. Slicing the newspaper paper, well, I wouldn't say it was, it posed a real problem, but I mean, it wasn't like, cutting butter with a lightsaber. But it did a pretty decent job, I'd say. So, I mean, fully sufficient sharpness. Just for the fun of it, we can do some shaving of leg hair now. So give me a second and I will prepare myself for that. Okay, so here we have a fine looking leg with some decent amount of leg hair. As usual, I'm not quite sure how visible it is, but hopefully, well, I can make it visible in post-editing. So let's try to do some shaving here now of hair and see what we can do. So, the knife will quite obviously shave leg hair. I'm so happy that I for once had some hair going on here. So, shaving hair, yeah, this is pretty much hair popping sharp. So now we can see, the different kinds of sharpness, slicing the different kinds of paper, shaving hair, etc. So, I mean, the knife is sharp. Now I'm gonna clean it up a little here for whatever we're gonna throw at it next. I was trying to come up with some additional sharpness tests, and I decided to go with slicing some pieces of leather, as well as slicing some paracord. And we can start with the paracord here. This is 3mm thick paracord. Should definitely not be, much of a struggle. I think I'm gonna have to be a bit careful though, so I don't, accidentally cut the table. So let's see if we can get this on camera without risking me, chopping down into the table. So let's see if we can go with this. Well, that was kind of effortless. Let's go with 2 pieces then. See, yeah. Not much of a struggle either. So let's go with, well, a lot more pieces. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah. Let's see. Now they're not all, evenly pressed, but I'll have to make the best of it. So let's see with these 9 strings here. That was fairly easy as well. Not a real struggle. The only difficult part is actually, keeping the blade balanced and pushing. So, but definitely not an issue in regards of actual, sharpness. What do we have here? This is a slightly thicker paracord. This should be, well, I'm not quite sure actually in terms of millimeter how thick this one is, but it is at least thicker than the orange one. This is perhaps, I don't know, 5 millimeters, something like that. So I think we're gonna go straight away with, yeah, something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, let's see what we can do here. Yeah, was it 5? Was it just 4? Or just, well, it is 4. So yeah, and once again try to, yeah, not, you know, not an issue whatsoever. Just, you know, pretty much glides straight through. The last piece here is like, I don't know how thick this is, but it's definitely the thickest piece, but I only have a small piece left from other sharpness tests, so we can just go with it like this. But yeah, a thicker paracord piece here. Well, not much of an issue either. So, well, there goes the paracord. Let's see. Let's move on to the leather pieces then. Never done this as a sharpness test before, but I guess we'll just have to see. I'm gonna use the same principle, stand like this. Yeah. Nice, very clean cut. This is a bit sturdier leather than this softer and slightly thinner piece. This could be perhaps a little bit more interesting. I'll take it at a wider part here as well, so it's going to be a bit more cutting to do. Or maybe if I'm going to go with just push cutting or actually this, you know, slicing. Well, anyways, let's try this now. Yeah, cut straight through. Effortless, more or less. And the last piece here is, well, I think it's somewhere in between in size and thickness, so it's not going to be that, you know, exciting perhaps, but I mean, I did bring the piece, so let's go with it as well. Yeah. So now we have done, well, at least a couple of different sharpness tests just to get some variation going. And I will say that the knife is sharp, definitely. Here is what we're gonna do now. We are out in the woods, but I want to start up with something, you know, a bit lighter work than, you know, heading straight to a tree and chopping it down, if we're even gonna do that. So what I want to start by doing is some feathers. So I have some pieces of birch here that I think will be, you know, nice to work with making feathers. And once we've done that, we can start, you know, splitting some twigs and sticks and perhaps taking down, if we can find a smaller sized dead tree, that would make for a, you know, a nice test of sorts. But we can start with the feather sticking here now. So, and I don't have the, you know, the really, you know, best spot here, and the pieces are quite, you know, semi-frozen. But let's work with what we have, at least see what we can manage to accomplish here. And I will just hope that it's semi-visible in the camera. Not sure, you know, which way I should really be standing. Maybe I should raise the camera a little bit, perhaps, ever so slightly, like that. Yeah. So let's get going now, shall we? See if we can make enough feathers to get a small fire started, huh? You know, it is quite thick behind the edge. The geometry does work, but it's not really, you know, your typical bushcraft knife, if I put it like that. And it really is quite heavy as well, you know.
some semi-nice curls, etc. But it's not a whole lot. We would need, we would need a lot more if we wanted to actually get a fire started. Let's see if we can make a nice piece out of this. Yeah. I managed to make a small continue here on this piece then, perhaps. I guess I don't have to say that this is quite a forward heavy blade. And the choil would have been actually really nice now, you know, when we do these sorts of feathering tasks. Sure, the finger groove works, but a choil would have been, you know, more useful. No doubt would it have been that. Let's go for this piece as well now. And my positioning is not, you know, it's not really optimal as well. This is not working out entirely as I as I was planning it to do. There are some cracks here, but maybe we can make feathers anyway. You know, I don't think this blade was, you know, made to make awesome feathers in any way. Should it be able to do feathers? I mean, most blades should, I guess. This is where we are at right now. So if we were to, you know, start a fire, we would perhaps have wanted some more than what we have here on the table. But it is at least a start, I'd say. We can try one more piece here and see if we can get some. Trying to get them curls to stay as well, not, you know, dropping off right away. I'm gonna settle like that, you know. It's not really the best, but even so, you know, if we were in a situation where this was the only knife, yeah, I guess we could be able to get feathers to make a fire. I didn't bring a fire steel now, but yeah, it is what it is. Let's see if I can. And I think one of the main concerns here for not making, you know, like the ultimate feathers is because of the thickness behind the edge. This knife was meant to be durable, not making the finest, you know, curliest of feathers. Let's try something else that this is more suited for, of sorts. So before we leave the feather stick area, I thought we could do some really light carving. Obviously not a carving knife, but should be able to, you know, carve a small spearhead with relative ease, I think. So that is what we're gonna do right now, fairly fast, I hope, and then we can move on to other more, perhaps slightly more, well, interesting things of sorts. See how fine we can get it. Yeah, now we have a super fine tip, beyond useful, but you know, just to see what we can do. So if you need to carve a barbecue skewer of sorts, this one will obviously do that. Absolutely. Yeah. I can actually do some really fine work here. Now we are making a toothpick as well. Some mini feather sticking. Or feather sticking, but just, you know, some super fine detailed work there. Oops, yeah, that was too fine. Made a small flower here. So, you know, let's see. Let's see. Have to be quite gentle now here. This is some really fine work. I'm not saying it's useful in any way, just saying it's, you know, well, fine work, so to say. Doing, you know, any additional carving, I don't feel the need for it, to be completely honest. So I think we're gonna leave it at that and move on to some other stuff now. For carving, yeah, I will carve. Here we have a birch tree that is rather small. It is dying. It is on my land and it is supposed to be taken down. It is cold outside and I expect it to be frozen. And I expect it to be, you know, it is dying, but it's not completely dead. So it could probably put up a minor challenge depending on the performance of this blade, despite being not that large. So I'm not, you know, 100% sure how this knife will act and work. The thickness here behind the edge is, you know, making me feel like, you know, it might not bite the way I'm used to when dealing with large choppers. Even so, we will give it a try. yeah, that much we can say. I am trying the two-handed position just a little bit, not because it's needed, but it does feel, you know, slightly more secure holding it with, you know, both your hands. So we are getting some small chunks out of here, as I presumed it would be. It is pretty much frozen, making it slightly harder. But it also kind of fresh as well. And it is biting differently than, well, at least all my convex knives, and also of course all my axes, since all my axes are indeed convex ground. I realize I am standing in the way. Slowly but surely we are working on our way to the core or midsection of sorts. So let's dismount the camera and take a closer look here at the marks here from the knife, the chops. So, looking at this part, well, it's not, you know, super interesting really. Looking down here on this part tells a bit more of a story. So we do have some semi-clean cuts. Let's see if I can but much like I stated, it felt very different using this knife. It could also be due to the wood, the hardness, the freshness, the cold, etc. It did bite differently. Sure, we got the job done. You can see where we no longer needed to chop, the fibers going here, when we were breaking the tree. And that is of course a good thing, because that means we can sort of steer the direction of where we want the tree to fall over. But yeah, it did chop the tree down. Not a really large tree, as you can see here. I'm not going to go after anything really much bigger. I haven't seen a lot of other trees that are dead or dying that are in another thickness. So this is, yeah, this is just a small test of sorts to see some of the, you know, capabilities of the knife. We could, of course, I think I brought some paper with me. We could do a field sharpness test, perhaps. Yeah, I'm gonna read the camera and we can do a field sharpness test. I really hope that this hasn't affected the sharpness in any way whatsoever. I mean, we have only, you know, done this small chopping. We have done some feathering and we have done some carving. The edge should be exactly as it was when we began, so I hope that is what we will see. But I'll set it all up. So I actually brought all the 3 types of paper, but I was actually only planning on using the printing paper. But we could perhaps try the other ones as well. Place it on the ground. I will say that I can feel that the paper has turned a bit damp, which might make it a bit different compared to when we did the slicing back home, but nonetheless, let's go. So I mean, it still slices fairly well, especially given that the paper is damp. See if we can try some of the other types of paper. So this is the newspaper paper, which is also damp. So this could be very interesting, I guess, or not. Come on. It's not very windy, but it's still catching the paper regardless. So it seems like we can actually cut this paper rather nicely as well. I guess that leaves only the magazine paper. Try that. Also damp, of course, since everything is getting damp here. And yes, I will clean up after myself here. All the slices of paper will be taken care of. So at least the knife is still, well, it may not be exactly as sharp as it was when we began, but it's still like 99% as sharp, so yeah. Clean this mess up. Next up, we're gonna do some splitting here of sticks and twigs. Some different types of wood as well, starting at a semi-good thickness, I believe. So let's see what we can do here. Now we're getting into some decently sized pieces here. Yep. A bit damp inside since it is kind of cold and wet. Now we're going with some pieces of pine. Damn. Well, I need to fix that so we can continue. So. So this is actually kind of what I think this knife is designed for. Splitting twigs and sticks. We have some other types here. I'm not sure what type of tree this is. All I know is that it's a fairly long piece of wood. Let's start here then, shall we? Perhaps not the safest, working environment, but you make do with what you have. So I'll see if I can find some additional pieces of wood we can work with, maybe some even harder woods than what we just tried. Here we have a small piece of pine dead that was taken down for unknown reasons. See if we can do something with that. Getting some, yeah, I can't, I'm gonna delimb this one a bit, or bronze or whatever you wanna. That will make it slightly easier to take a look at the cuts once we have made them. Yeah. So, last cut looked something like, well, like out of focus. Yeah, whatever. We will just continue here now. So, with the pine. First piece we didn't get in one chop. Maybe I didn't take my full strength at it either. Some ice and stuff going on here. Partially cutting it off, partially breaking it. Definitely the hardest piece so far. Yeah. Getting into it. Not completely through in one chop. You know, if I could, would have been interesting to use both hands or, you know, full force, not having to hold the actual piece at the same time, but I don't have any, you know, assistant with me in the woods. If I want to get something done, I have to do it myself. Yeah. This tree is starting to take a bit damage as well. Completely frozen solid. So I think that's gonna be enough for splitting twigs and sticks. I will admit that we haven't done, you know, a super lot of work with this knife, but we have done a bit of work, just, you know, trying it out. I mean, there is no other video on YouTube, so anything is better than nothing, right? So I think I'm gonna clean it up a little and start heading my way home. It will get dark in, well, about 20 minutes, so could be a clever thing to do, I guess. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. So in this practical segment we're gonna do some batoning. We've already put a knife to some random use out in the woods. We've done some sharpness tests, etc. And batoning, well, some people like doing it, others do not. But I think that, you know, this knife is more designed for batoning than slicing tomatoes in the kitchen. So batoning it is, and it would feel kind of strange leaving out that segment in a video about a knife like this. So batoning it is now. And I have some different types of wood here. I'm gonna start with this piece. I have a larger piece, I have more dense wood, and I have a bit lighter wood perhaps. I might need something to strike with though. Let's strike with another piece of wood here. Let's go semi against the grain here to make it slightly more challenging, I would say. And I hope this is visible in the camera now. Well, that wasn't super tough. Maybe we can use, this is definitely a bit heavier. Let's use one of these as hammer now. Yeah. Let's take a completely different piece here. This one is a heavier piece, denser wood. Once again, let's go, the grain is going like this, so we're going to go against the grain to make it more of a challenge of sorts. Maybe we should actually put it, so it's, I mean, just to get different views for the camera, for the viewers. Yeah, this is going to be a bit different. I'm going to have to use another hammer of sorts. Should have thought about that. See if I can find a suitable piece in here to use as my hammer. Let's try this one. Could potentially do the trick. So, well, we did break the batoning hammer, but we also got this piece off here. This is very heavy, you know, quite dense. Let's see if we can go like this now. Also not, you know, fully with the grain, but not fully against either. So. I'm gonna break these pieces of wood here. I need something even stronger. I'm gonna use this one. At least it won't fall apart. So let's see here if we can actually manage. Now we're talking. Let's take this final piece here as well. So let's take another piece as well. Something with a bit more interesting grain patterns, perhaps. Yeah, let's go with this one. Let's take another piece, perhaps this one. This is kind of dense and heavy as well. Let's go like this, should make for the most challenging batoning. Okay. You know, having this blade length and this thickness really makes for a great batoning knife, if that is what you like doing with your knives. No doubt. See if we can get it all placed up here. These pieces that we also batoned. So I think that's it for the batoning segment. As you know, as I expected, it was not very difficult for the knife to batone. It is probably one of the things that is knife excels probably the best at. But just between you and me, I kind of prefer my axes. But I'm not gonna lie, putting this knife to any type of use is kind of fun. Yesterday I was out in the woods putting this blade to some use. We took down a kind of small size tree. We did some light branching. We did some splitting or chopping twigs and sticks, and also did some feather sticking and carving. And I was thinking about practical use for a knife like this, other than killing zombies. But we have also done some different sharpness tests, slicing some different types of paper, doing some leg hair shaving, etc. But I thought that we should add something more to the video, and I checked the fridge and I saw some tomatoes that I'm probably not going to eat because they are a bit, well, I should have eaten them perhaps a few days ago. But they are still very much sufficient for a slicing test. So this is not really a food prep part of the video, more of a yet another sharpness test, I guess you could call it. This is not your typical kitchen knife of sorts. I really am wondering more and more about the design, but I do know I mean, this blade is just, it's so goddamn cool, and I rarely use that term to describe any of my knives, but this one is, it's just kind of special. Anyways, let's do some slicing of tomatoes. I'm just gonna slice them up in some different ways and see how how the edge performs. I have not sharpened the edge, so this is I did just clean off the sap and wood residue of sorts, but it's not sharpened, so I guess it's gonna be like a sharpness test after some use as well, to put it like that. So let's see what we can do with these tomatoes here. So let's start with this one. Let's go for full round slices for this one. See if we can break through the peel. See how thin pieces we can get here. Well, I'm not saying it was super thin, but I am saying it's quite squishy, this tomato. It's been in my fridge for way too long. I forgot I even had it in there. So, but in terms of getting through the peel without getting stuck or anything, it is nicely cutting through the peel. It's very watery. Trying to get many different parts of the edge here for cutting through here. See if we can go like this. Yeah. So I mean, obviously this knife was not designed for kitchen work, but and I doubt that that some people are going to say, well, this is all I have to work with in the kitchen, but who knows? A one tool option, right?
squishy. Yeah, so I mean, like I said, I'm not gonna eat it. That's why I'm cutting it in, you know, just some random pieces of sorts. I mean, it really doesn't matter. Let's take away the actual meat here. Precision work, right? Yeah. So, like I said, this was just, you know, a test of sharpness of sorts here. Cutting through the tomato in all kinds of different ways and fashions. Let's see if we can get him. I guess a better test would be, you know, chopping up this cutting board in pieces instead. But I don't think we're gonna do that right now, at least. So, well, not a whole lot left here of the tomato, so I guess, you know, it was sharp enough to slice it up in small pieces like this. I'll see if I can think out something else we can do before, you know, moving on to, you know, like final conclusions and stuff like that. We have now reached the final part of what is turning out to be quite a lengthy video review of my first experience with Bladeworx in the form of not just one but two Warmongers. Although I only put the antique version to the real test, whereas the black Cerakote version got to sit back and, you know, just enjoy the ride from the side. I mean, they are identical knives, just aside from the Cerakote finish. And like I stated in the beginning of this video, it is offered in a wide variety of Cerakote finishes like grey, dark earth, bronze, and a few others that I can't think of on the top of my mind. These were the two that I personally thought looked best, but it's gonna be personal preferences that makes the decision in which knife you decide to pick up. Aside from being my first experience with a design made by Matt, it's also my first experience with Sleipner blade steel. And I think I mentioned this in the beginning of the video, that Sleipner is sort of an improvement over D2, or, well, an improvement in terms that it is a tougher blade steel. And toughness is of course something you would like to see in a large knife designed primarily for, you know, chopping and batoning and, I mean, doing like hard knife related tasks. I'm still kind of confused, you know, about the exact, you know, thought process behind the blade. I just know that it is one of my more stylish looking large blades. I really like the design, and that is also why I decided to pick up not just one but two of this knife. And I mean, it may not be, you know, perhaps my best performing knife in this size, but it is probably one of, you know, the coolest looking knives, and sometimes that is a factor that I have to weigh in a little bit at least. But, you know, during the test we have seen that it is a sharp knife. It sliced all the three types of paper. It cut through the paracords without any effort. It cut through leather with no effort. It shaved my leg hair, which is always a good thing, I guess. It also sliced two tomatoes with, you know, fairly ease. And out in the woods we did some carving, we did some feather sticking. We took down a smaller sized tree, and we did some chopping and splitting of different sized twigs and sticks that were more or less frozen solid, which made for an interesting, you know, toughness test of sorts. So I mean, we have put it to a little bit of use. There are not a whole lot of videos on YouTube of this model. I think there is just one other video, and it's in Russian, and there is no actual use of the knife. I like to see the knives being actually put to some use. I mean, I'm not talking about, you know, super hard abuse tests or anything, but it's just nice to see how the knife performs in some different tasks and contexts. So I do, let's put this one aside here and let's focus on the satin version. So I do like the look of this knife a lot. I like the handle design, kind of, you know, thin here, widening out here on the back. It makes for, you know, many different comfortable grips when doing certain tasks. I also like the placement and the size of the finger groove works well with my size 10 in gloves hands. What I still don't like too much about it is this sharpening slash finger choil. And I looked up some other knife designs made by Matt, and it seems that this, you know, design is sort of his trademark. So I guess that is, you know, it is what it is. I would have liked a large finger choil. It would have been super nice when doing some carving and when doing some feather sticking and also some other slicing tasks. Then again, the knife was probably not designed with that in mind, so I'm not gonna, you know, make any more fuss about it. It's just that my personal preferences is that I would have liked a fully functioning finger choil. That would have been super nice. I also think that the edge is, while, you know, being a sharp edge, it is kind of thick behind, you know, it really is kind of thick behind the edge here. So, but still, it is a sharp knife. It is a sharp knife, and I mean, we could do a lot of stuff with it, and I guess that, you know, it would be super hard to actually, you know, damage the edge, to get any chips or rolls or anything in it. I feel like this is a knife that can't be, pretty much can't be broken. I think this can withstand a lot of stuff, but like I said, I'm not gonna do a destruction test of this knife. I don't feel like putting it through it, but if I was gonna, you know, if I had to pick a few of my knives to pass through a destruction test, this is probably one of the knives that I would pick, because I feel like it is super tough, like extremely tough. There is no doubt about it. It is a heavy knife, and that was, you know, it is a good thing when doing batoning. It is the same good thing when taking down a tree, and also when, you know, splitting pieces of twigs and sticks. But when doing finer works, carving, etc., doing feather sticks, you do feel like this is a heavy blade, and, you know, it is quite forward heavy. I don't know where the balance point exactly is. Perhaps right there. So it is a quite forward heavy blade, something to keep in mind. Some people might think that, you know, the tip here, is it going to be delicate? Is it going to hold up? I didn't do any tip test, but the tip is quite sturdy, quite strong. I do not see this tip breaking off anytime soon at all. It is a strong tip. That is my opinion about it. Let's see, what more can we say here? Trying to gather all my thoughts here about the general design. What have I yet to mention? Handle did work great. You know, it is ergonomical, not only like this, but in actual use. The screws that are protruding here, I have never, you know, had an issue, you know, feeling it, or, you know, getting any marks or hot spots or anything. It just feels great in hand. Is this a bit, you know, style over function? In some sense, to me, I would say perhaps yes, in certain areas, but still a highly functional blade. An expensive tool, an expensive knife, yes, it is kind of expensive. And whether it's worth it or not, well, it's going to be you know, up to the individual that picks it up. To me, it is worth it, because I like to have some you know, semi-unique designs in my collection of users. And this will be a user, I mean it is a user, I can't say it's not a user because I've put it through all the things I've put it through. And the Cerakote one is going to be a user as well. I can't talk about how well the Cerakote is going to hold up because I haven't put it to any use yet, but that will be maybe for an update video of sorts. So, should we say something more about the sheath? The sheath has held up nicely. Have had no issues with it, no stitching, breaking, or the knife cutting through the sheath or anything. But like I said, I still would have, I would have kind of liked a slightly different design perhaps, with the possibility of adding a dangler, or at least some kind of belt loop system, or a kydex from the get-go, or a kydex with leather wrapping on would have been perhaps the nicest option in my opinion. But a fully functioning sheath it is, absolutely. And it still smells good. So, Warmonger. First video review on YouTube. Very interesting knife and design. Large, heavy knife. Yeah, that kind of sums it up. Sleipner did, hold up well for my tests, but I'm not sure if, it is representative for all knives made in Sleipner. And I will say once again, the edge is, well, it's got a lot of meat or beef behind the edge here, so might be different if you're trying out another, knife with a different geometry in Sleipner steel. But overall it is a steel that has held up well for me, with this specific knife. Over and out.